Welcome to another segment of our Smart Business Entrepreneurship Conference. At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Laurence Modeste, the Deputy National Chief Digital Officer of the Ministry of Digital Transformation. Welcome, Mr. Laurence.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. And thank you for taking time out of your schedule. As I would have mentioned to other guests, I know you are very busy from A to Z. I mean, there's a lot we want to talk about today from your wealth of experience in the telecommunications, the energy field. You're talking about music, and more importantly, leadership.
Yeah.
Right? So to start, can you kindly share with our audience a little bit about yourself, from the upbringing, education, family life? Can you share with the audience?
Sure thing. Well, I'm a little older than I look. And I had a very interesting upbringing. My dad was a minister and chaplain, and my mom is a school teacher and retired principal. So academic excellence was always a necessary thing. I tell people I'm the underachiever in the family, although I have 5 degrees, right? Wow. My second sister, who's a dean at Columbia Law, she did a double major at the undergrad level. So she actually graduated 2 double majors. So she graduated with 4 degrees essentially at the undergrad level. And then my eldest sister is a retired professor and so on as well. One of the things I've always been passionate about is people. And as I progressed through college, I realized that the best way to support people is to give them the right processes under them, and then that would allow them to perform at the highest levels.
Okay.
I spent a fair amount of time in IT, although that wasn't my first area of study. It's the first one I chose.
Right.
Most of my dad's siblings are in the medical field. And so the understanding was you will go study medicine and become a doctor. Right. In my graduating year doing pre-med, I realized the smell of formaldehyde, dissecting cadavers, that just wasn't for me.
That wasn't your thing.
That wasn't my thing. So I did a business case to my dad as to why I needed to change majors, although I'm in my graduating year, right? He listened to me. But then he gave me the very fatherly hand on the shoulder, and he said, okay, this is what's going to happen. You will graduate with first class honors. Instruction. You'll graduate with first class honors, right. And then you'll go get yourself a job,
right.
And you'll go get into this business and IT thing that you say you're interested in.
Okay.
And that's exactly what happened, right?
Okay.
Did IT first, then business, then master's degrees in both.
Wow. And that was like within what period of time? Like how many years? Because that's 5 degrees, masters. Could you elaborate a little bit on it?
So pre-med, which is 3 years, and then 2 years for my bachelor's in business, another about 1.5 years for my bachelor's in IT, and then 2 years each master's degrees for them.
How did you manage to keep seeing during that time? Like, what was the inspiration? Like, what day did you wake up and say, I want to do 5 degrees?
I think one thing kind of led to another.
Right.
And, like I remember the first time I got a B in college, we actually had a family meeting about it, right? To try to unpack with why a B? Why not straight A's like, your siblings, right? That and the fact that I think I was a bit sheltered growing up. So whereas most of my roommates in college were wilding out, I was just in my dorm room, being a bit of an introvert, and studying hard, studying well, right? I was the smallest guy in my dorm room, but I was the smartest guy. And I had a bit of a temper, so what I would do is I might start a fight, but then the 3 or 4 bigger dudes in my room would come to my defense because I'm the guy helping them do their homework, right? So they had to protect the brain, right? I really had a love for technology, always did. Was deep into IT for way too long. Right. And then I think probably about 2000... And 6, I decided to do a pivot.
Before you continue, you mentioned being in the dorm, right? I mean, the previous guest mentioned that even though while he was studying, he never really got to experience that college, university life. Could you share with our audience, the college life, the university, and how much that played in your upbringing in terms of,
I think it definitely would help with socialization and I dare say even culturalization because, like I said, I was quite an introvert. For a long time. But if you in a dorm room, people make fun of you. You had a man up, they'll give you 3 o'clock in the morning, they'll haze you right to wake you up to an ice bath, any number of things. If they thought you were being too shy to talk to a girl. They will try to give you pointers, you know, any number of things. I always encourage young persons, even as they study, if they have the opportunity to stay on campus, locally or even abroad, and just get more exposure, interact with more and different types of people.
The socialization
is always exceptionally beneficial. Even, you know, if you have the opportunity to travel, especially if you have a job where they're paying. So it's not on your dime, that's always fantastic. Just to, again, immerse yourself in different cultures, understand how different people think, kind of broaden your horizons, broaden two things, your perspective, which is how you see things, and your perception, which is what you see. And nothing could help that, I think, more than just interacting and engaging with different people from different cultures and contexts.
So from that, you mentioned going into IT. What was that experience like?
Oh, that was entertaining. Again, because I started off quite introverted. I actually used to have a sign on my door: the more I work with people, the more I like computers. So IT was almost like my natural hideaway, where I could just sit in a corner, program, fix hardware, etc. But then when you started to work your way up the ranks, you needed to engage with not just persons in the organization more, but the leaders of the organization. And one of the things I got quite consumed with was the concept of getting the leadership to understand that IT is a utility, yes, but if we infuse IT appropriately into different aspects of the business, we could help them deliver on their business objectives. So now you're moving from just a technical conversation to more of a business, and I dare say digital transformation type of conversation, right? And I think that kind of helped my team as well understand, because by then I had several persons reporting to me. That helped them understand that, look, you don't just have to be, you know, a guy crimping cables till 2 in the morning. There's actually scope and opportunity for you outside of that if you're willing to grow yourself.
So let me ask a question. So being qualified, being multiple degrees, would have afforded you a number of opportunities to work immediately, I guess, even in public, private sector. Right? But you went on to do your master's, right?
All while working.
All while working. What was the focus in terms of the master's program, and what inspired it in terms of that specialization now?
Right. So after I completed my BSc, I went straight ahead, did my MSc in information systems. And I had this grand plan that I'd probably do a PhD in artificial intelligence and go work for NASA. Having completed the MSc though, I started to think more about how could I actually leave an impact, well, make an impact and leave a legacy. And I didn't quite see a fit for that just staying in IT. I'm a man of faith, so I had some conversations with God, and he kind of encouraged me, look, I want to shift you to business, business development, sales, people engagement, people enablement. I was resistant to it at first, but you know, I kind of decided, look, let me man up, take this challenge, do the MBA. What's interesting is, where I was working at the time, I was sending out multiple resumes trying to get a different job, right? I was actually based in St. Martin. I was living and working in St. Martin for the better part of 8 years. And wasn't being very successful. Everybody would think, well, you're too qualified. You know that story, right? And well, the fact that I was being paid in US at the time also wasn't helpful to the conversation, because I think most of them felt, well, we don't know that we could match your salary, etc. I graduated with my MBA August of 2007, and I landed my first job in sales and business development a month later. So it's almost as though God was saying to me, this is where I want you to be, and as soon as you act accordingly, the opportunity will present itself, right?
So I'm sure that would have been somewhat a period of discouragement, thinking that you're doing the right thing, you're becoming qualified, you're adding layers of specialty within it. What do you think, you know, what got you out of that? So in terms of deciding from your experiences at St. Martin, where you're overqualified, and what guided that next step then?
Yeah, I think that is the way life communicates with us sometimes. So we look at challenges and think, okay, this is probably everything going wrong, when the truth is it may actually be a redirection to what your next step or your next pivot could or should be. And I think you know, one of the things I tell people is, look, everybody has a unique purpose. Now, how that purpose manifests itself over time will change. It might change in terms of the role, but it still feeds into your purpose. A quick example, my mom, like I said, is a retired teacher and principal, right? Her purpose has always been to empower, inspire, educate.
Right.
Now, that will show up in different roles over time. When she was a teacher, when she was a principal, she's a poet, she's a speaker, an author, all of those things. So the role changes, but the purpose is maintained. I think I got hung up on the role. I thought in order to do these things, I have to be in IT, or I have to be a group IT director, any number of things. When, God was really showing me, you can pivot to other roles and still, fulfill that purpose, yeah?
Quick question. As you mentioned, the spiritual side of things, the guidance, how would you describe the audience, that upbringing in terms of the organization, and that how would that have changed your life in terms of,
I tell people my parents were by no means perfect, but and we didn't always have an easy life. But I think the most important thing they did was they got us to understand and appreciate the need for a relationship with God. And more importantly, to hear and understand that, that is God talking to you. Yeah. And aligning that to, what's in the Bible, right? There were lots of decisions in my life that I think, were it not for that core, it would have gone very differently.
Could have gone, right.
And I think part of the reason I am, not a part, the main reason I'm still here and I'm able to positively impact others is because of that core. Because I had my days wilding out, drag racing and writing off cars and getting scars and almost, right? It's, yeah.
Etc.
Yeah.
It wasn't all sunshine.
It wasn't all sunshine. I had my days
of wilding out. Time. And what, as you said, the upbringing, the organizations, your parents, guidance from parents.
One of the things I'm really thankful for is it did two things. It gave discipline and structure. Yeah. And especially, again, when I talk to young people, I encourage them, two of the most important things. Discipline, and what helps you maintain discipline is structure. Right. It could start, as simply as making your bed in the morning, getting up on time. Those little things is the little choices you make every day that build your character, right? Yeah. And your character determines how you finish. So life isn't really about how you start or what you start with. It's more about how you finish. Correct. And how you finish is determined by these little choices, that consistency. I think there was an author who said the rarest of all human qualities is consistency, right? Yeah. And if you are able, in any organization, in any role, if you are able to be consistent, people will notice that. And people promote that type of behavior, right? Consistency. Yeah.
Amazing. Tell us about the transition from energy into telecom.
Again, interesting because I had so acclimatized myself to working within a particular space. But in my mind, it's like, well, the principles of sales are essentially the same, right? Because I got into business development and sales. And sales is really just the transference of belief. What people buy, as much as people claim to be buying based on logic or a need, is really your belief they're buying into. Right. And so if your focus is, I need to get this person to pay for this, you're starting off wrong. Yeah. You have to understand, okay, what is that person's need? Mm-hmm. And if what I am selling is going to meet that need, and I strongly believe that, they will buy into your belief. Right. So in my mind, it's like, okay, I've acquired this skill, I've gotten pretty good at it. I'm doing some really good numbers. I'm leading a team that is doing fantastic numbers. Mm-hmm. The technology I'm selling might change, but the principles of sales remain the same, right? Okay. And I remember getting into telecoms, the organization I was with at the time, they were heavily focused on what we call managed service sales. So it's not just selling, infrastructure, equipment, a one-time sale. It's how can we get a subscription type model off of this thing? And I think at the time we were only doing about 8,000 US a year. By the time I left that organization, we were doing more than 70 million US a year.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And it really is teamwork. So I felt like I was getting to enact or work out my passion for people and lead people to, I like, one of the definitions I have of leadership, and it's a really nice one. It's really inviting people on a journey to discover the best version of themselves. Right. Because you can't build anything bigger than you. So the better you are as a person is the better salesperson you'll be, the better leader. Everybody has a leadership responsibility, even if they don't have a leadership role. Okay. So my role as a leader is to make other leaders, not to get followers. Right? So if I develop you into a better version of you and you go out there and you kick butt and take names, it empowers you, yes, but it also means I could be empowered, because if I'm the only person doing something in an organization and doing it really well, and I haven't mentored or coached anyone to take over for me, they'll never move me from this role, right?
Correct.
So like even in that organization, effectively every maybe 14 to 18 months I got a promotion, because I was training people to take over from me,
Succession
right?
planning.
Succession planning, right?
Excellent.
Some leaders now, they're hyper focused on, you know, what they bring to the table, and you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And it's always good to, is that an African proverb? If you want to go far, go with a team, go together. If you want to go fast, you could go on your own, right? But if you want to build something that is sustainable and leaves a legacy, you have to build a team.
Team.
Bring the right people in, coach, mentor, guide them, and launch off.
Excellent. To add to this whole, you know, segment of telecommunication, just my personal experience, being in the technology field since 2007, right? Running your own business, you know, offering solutions to SMB, gov, healthcare, whatever. So it was a different sort of, you know, operations. At your pace, submit your proposals. When you get a deal, you live, you know, another day, right? But actually going and working in a really established enterprise, right? The intensity of it far outweighed what you would have done in your SME.
Right.
And in terms of the intensity, it's like, I remember there were times, every night I dream in cell tower. You understand?
Listen.
I dream in, every night is like cell towers, fiber,
I wholeheartedly relate, trust me.
So, and people don't understand how intense once you get
it's all consuming
to our market. So my question to you is, after all those years of study, energy, telecommunications, what helped you balance, you know, that that challenge? How were you able to unplug?
Yeah.
You know?
I think the focus on people was definitely helpful, because I would read, go to conferences, listen to things that were more focused on growing and developing myself and others. Yeah. And then my first love is actually music. Right. So there's a studio we own. I also have a studio at home. I do music production. So some people, to unwind, they would look at television or, I don't know, drink a glass of wine or something. I would go produce a track or two.
Right. Excellent.
I am equally right and left brain, so I could be very technical, numbers oriented, but then like I said, I'll produce music, I'll paint, I'll whatever, right? And that helps me maintain my sanity. Yeah. Because to your point, like I said, I'll share your experience where 3 o'clock in the morning you'll jump off the bed because you figured out, oh, this is how I have to present this service order form so the client will sign. And if I add these on, I could move the monthly recurring revenue from this to that, and then I could get a bonus, and it's
non-stop.
It's non-stop. It's non-stop.
Yeah.
So that is definitely I encourage people, you know, for some of us it might be you take a regular sweat, you have your workout routine, you go for your swim, you spend some time in nature, some time with your family, you read a good book. One of the best ways to unwind and to always learn and to stay relevant is reading. So I encourage people to be bookworms. If reading isn't for you, audiobook. Listen to, you know.
Excellent.
The 8 Habits of Highly Effective People. Something to keep
going.
The brain.
So to unplug.
To unplug.
As they would say.
Yeah.
Ministry of Digital Transformation. Transitioning from enterprise at the highest level, you know, top tier telecoms, you know, from all sides.
Yeah.
Into public service.
I'm glad you said public service and not public sector, because that was really my motivation for getting into it. Yeah. Service. I would have worked with organizations, sales teams, and generated an awful lot of money for them. And the question I started asking myself is, and this is not to knock any of them, the solutions that were being deployed, how much benefit actually ended up, you know, trickling down to the average person. So you might get some massive savings in, you know, deploying a hosted PBX solution and wireless, and, you know, we do a good mobile plan fee. All of that stuff is great, you know, maybe surveillance and security. But the average Trinidad and Tobago citizen, how are they benefiting from some of these solutions? And the truth is they're not. We are not seeing ICT being infused in a way to support our best and brightest. We might very well have among, you know, our young people, the next Mark Zuckerberg. I don't like to make comparisons, but, you know, a Zuckerberg, a Bezos, a Dell, a Grizzly. Why not, right? Our role is really, as a government, what governance, what processes, guidelines, procedures can we put in place to ensure that what's deployed and delivered supports our best and brightest to be able to deliver on these things? So one of the things the ministry launches Developers Hub, because there's a feeling that we really need to support our own. We have some amazing, talented young people. And the feeling is, if there's a particular application that is needed somewhere in government, why go pay, one of these top 5, big 5 to do it when you have the talent here that can do it? You can do it securely. You have already the right architecture, the homologated network, everything. We have, 5 tier 3 data centers here. The government is building the first tier 4 in the English-speaking Caribbean. So you're putting the right things in place to support people, the processes. Now, if you train the people correctly, they will perform at the highest level. And it's sustainable, right? Because one of our challenges, you'd hear people talk all the time about our reliance on oil and gas. Materially, how are we going to change that unless we invest appropriately in other sectors? We have to find the young people who are talented, invest in them, and then push the kind of contribution ICT makes to GDP.
Let me ask you this, as you mentioned, the previous guest, we were having a conversation in terms of most of the persons that I would have gone to school with, whether it's UE, whether it's Costa, John D, telecom engineering, whatever, a lot of them, they have migrated. The majority of associates that I would have graduated with have migrated. So, question, in terms of the investment government would have, and taxpayers, education, IT, let's not even go into the other areas. Let's just stick with the IT digital. What solutions are there for all that investment, persons leaving, and then public sector searching for international providers after all that money was invested to train local resources?
I will answer that. That's actually a great question. If I could just add to that, what is often interesting is we'll go to these international companies and the resources they send to Trinidad to work is Trinidadians who are living and working abroad, right? And it's not just in IT. I mean, I am the only one of my siblings that returned to Trinidad, right? And I think part of the problem is, yes, we're training and we're certifying people, but are we providing suitable opportunities of either entrepreneurship business for them, which things like D-Hub we hope will do, or just job opportunities where they could be fairly compensated for what they bring to the table. And if you don't do that, people will be snapped up by. So I'm constantly seeing even some of the colleagues I've worked with, I've only been with the ministry maybe a year, not even a year and a half, barely a year and a half. And their colleagues I've worked with who've been snapped up by other agencies because, wow, this guy is so qualified in cybersecurity or any number of things, right? So we keep seeing that brain drain. And there are good people that are here that are working with us, but it's people who have probably tapped into this whole public service, national good, bigger picture than themselves. You're young and you're trying to get established, buy your first house, any number of things, and some foreign company comes and makes you an offer. You're going.
What you're going to do?
And I think we need to look beyond this whole concept of, you're a returning scholar, so you're mandated to work for us for 3 years. That's almost like a carrot and a stick, right? And that I don't think that works effectively. I think if you give people suitable opportunities, they will stay. So that is and I think the best way to achieve that is the government has to partner with the private sector, because the private sector could pay way better than government, right? I mean, if you qualified in cybersecurity, you could get a job paying you 150,000 US a year. You can't realistically expect the government of Trinidad and Tobago to pay you $1 million TT a year. That's just, the government will get voted out, right? So we have to figure out some of those partnerships and see how we could get people into those type of roles locally, or get them set up in business to make it profitable, sustainable for them.
Another question, being in the telecommunications at your level, offering government solutions at the highest level, you mentioned the investments that were made, and, seeing that return on investment. What suggestions do you, or what would you recommend now in terms of, what's the word, in terms of accountability, you return on investment from that private sector. From a private sector, okay, we're going to invest this, for this result within this period of time.
Right.
So the same way, from a public sector standpoint, funds are being invested X, Y, Z. What is like the clear, how could we have accountability and results?
Yeah. I think one of the key things to that is governance. We have to be very strong on governance. And as much as people hate this word, process. Now, process doesn't have to be onerous. I think sometimes process is a simple thing. You can have an electric vehicle and there's a simple process to maintain it and keep it fully functional. It doesn't have to be complicated. We say process and people assume it's a difficult, it's a complex thing. One of the things, for example, governments need to look at is how do they, for want of a better word, either mandate or inspire innovation. Fantastic book I read years ago by Andreas Oppenheimer, Innovate or Die. And any time a business stops innovating, it's on its way to failure, right? Being written off in the pages of history. I was sharing with you earlier the example of Steve Ballmer from Microsoft. He said there's no version of reality he could think of where people wouldn't want a phone that has a physical keyboard. That was years ago, right? Yeah. Windows Phone has died. I don't know of many phones, BlackBerry is, right? I don't know many phones, if any, that have a physical keyboard at present. So people get hung up on where we are and they're not focused on what's next. So the government needs to find ways to incentivize innovation. Look at, for example, if you're going to give government contracts to a provider, why not ensure that that provider puts a particular amount of their revenue back into not just the local context, but into research and development to demonstrate they're bringing new and better things to the market all the time. Otherwise, you're basically recycling.
That's a great idea. So they're sort of reinvesting back into that is excellent. That is excellent. And I would like to believe, coming from private sector, especially telecoms, is, it's a sort of make it happen industry.
Oh, yeah.
You present your offering, you present your case, and it's all about execution. Execution is no time to waste.
Correct.
How have you managed that aspect of that market into public service, public sector, whereas I don't use the term 1,000 years to make a decision. How are you able to be an agent of change with your wealth of experience as a telecom executive and a director in the enterprise government sector? What recommendations would you put forward?
One of the reasons my favorite topic right now is leadership, right? Everything rises and falls on the back of leadership. So even if people don't have a leadership role, like I said, they have a leadership responsibility. And part of it is not just leading myself in a way that positively impacts others, but leading and guiding even my upline as to why certain decisions are critical. If we have a hard decision to make, and there are people who keep coming to me with all the problems, you're allowed to come to me with a problem once. After that, if you mention the problem, please mention a solution. Otherwise, what you're saying to me is you want attention, you don't want to solve the problem, right? So there's a lot of leading by example, and you have to ingratiate yourself with the decision makers and get them to understand why this is necessary. The other thing is understanding what the process is. For example, in private sector, it's very easy to say, okay, this is what's going to happen, like my father did, right? This is what's going to happen, and you lay down the law. In public sector, it takes a lot more engagement and I dare say finesse. You can walk things through in public sector, but you have to build the relationships. And there are people who, they're not interested in that type of change, that type of work. They just want to be able to back out and make things happen. And there are people in our ministry, for example, our minister is fantastic at that. He will ingratiate himself with, rank and file. So that everybody understands what the benefit and the outcome of something will be. And then we'll work with all the stakeholders to, get them aligned to this is why we need to do what we need to do. And it's interesting, when you get people aligned to a purpose, they will creatively collaborate with you to get to that end state. And sometimes they will give you the tips, the points, the tricks. They will say, well, if you do this, if you move this here, if you get the PS to sign up for this, we could make things happen. I think the greatest challenge with public sector isn't actually process or bureaucracy. It's really a funding issue. In private sector, you know exactly what is coming in, when it's coming in, and how you can expense that, how you can spend that. In public sector, it's different. Multiple things could be at play. You might have a forex issue. You might, and so you might think, okay, I'm expecting this much cash and I can do these 5 things. And then by mid-year, realize, okay, I have a shortfall of X billion. Now it's about prioritization and how can we make as many of these things that we wanted to happen, right? So that takes, it's exciting in a way because it's a new challenge, assuming you're a person who appreciates challenges. And again, figuring out how to, align with people and see what is in it for them, what is the outcome they're looking for, and how you could collaborate to help them achieve that.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Laurence Modeste, the Deputy National Chief Digital Officer.
Longest title in the world.
Of the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Mr. Laurence.